My guest today is Nancy Confer, the founder and director of Florida Unschoolers, which she launched in 2001. Florida Unschoolers is a tuition-free private umbrella school that serves over 14,000 Florida unschoolers and homeschoolers, and has for now more than 2 decades. So, Nancy Confer, welcome to the LiberatED podcast.
Thank you so much, Kerry. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here. I've been a longtime admirer of Florida Unschoolers, and I'm so thrilled that we're able to connect. I'd love to hear sort of the origin story of Florida Unschoolers. What made you decide to launch back in 2001?
My son, my son went to regular brick and mortar pre-K and regular brick and mortar kindergarten. Very bright boy, could already read. He was bored to tears, literally getting sadder every day until it finally got through to my brain that maybe that had something to do with school, where he was most of the day. And I asked him about it, and he said, "Mom, they never let us learn anything new." So I said, okay, this has to be fixed. And what can we do? And so I looked into homeschooling. And the options then were to register with your county or enroll. I didn't even know about umbrella schools then, but they existed way back then. So I registered with the county, and we were off and running, and did it that way for a year, which is keeping a portfolio and having an annual evaluation. And I followed the Florida state standards, and I was very, gung ho about the whole thing, being, by the book and in step. And then I realized none of that had anything to do with what my kid was actually learning, because he was miles ahead of all that. And he wasn't all in one grade level, and he was all over the place, and it was all good stuff, but didn't fit neatly into boxes. So that's when I learned about unschooling, which is much more following what he's interested in and letting him grow naturally. And then we did the first evaluation, where we met with this nice lady at the park, and she looked through our box of stuff and gave us a letter for the county. That was our annual evaluation. It's not a bad system. And I always tell homeschoolers, if you're registered that way, don't be afraid of the annual evaluation. It doesn't have to be that big negative thing. But having to list what he did during the day as a certain school subject just really didn't fit with, what was actually going on in our life. So I looked into umbrella schools. I'd always worked in offices. I know I could handle the paperwork. That was no issue. So decided to start one. And the first year there were 6 kids enrolled. I had 2 friends when their kids were enrolled, and there were a total of 6 kids. And that's really all I wanted to accomplish was, something for my kids and those couple of friends. And now 20 some years later, it has really grown, with the whole idea of letting people do what they want to do with their kids and doing what's
Just
appropriate for
amazing.
their kids.
Ah, just so incredible. Okay, so let me see if I get this right, Nancy, that um, in order to be a homeschooler in Florida, you have sort of 2 different routes. One is to register locally as a homeschooler and have an evaluation at the end of each year, showing what you've done. Or the other is to enroll in one of these umbrella schools, which is not a brick and mortar school. It's more of an entity that sort of enables you to homeschool in a variety of different ways. I wonder if you can explain a little bit more about this concept of umbrella schools.
Each umbrella school is a private school, registered with the Florida Department of Education as a private school. You have your little code number and everything. And they're each individually owned by a person like me. I own mine. Every other umbrella school is owned by a person or a group of people who get together and decide to do one, or a church or some group that decides to do one. And we each decide what we're going to require. My requirements are you do the enrollment paperwork and I leave you alone. People seem to like that. Other people form their umbrella schools around a particular curriculum or a particular interest, like we're all going to go out and do things in nature, or we're all about our church, or whatever their umbrella school is about, that forms the basis of what you're required to do as a parent. And my school, when we sat around, my husband and I sat around the night that I was putting this school together, what name, what should we call this school? The name of the school, Florida Unschoolers, is not accidental. My husband particularly liked the acronym, and it exactly expresses how much we want just to be left alone and do our thing with our terrific kids. And then it grew and grew and grew. And it's an opportunity, it's a space for other people to do the same things with their kids. What's appropriate for your child? What are their goals and interests and strengths, and what do they need to work on? Whatever. And other umbrella schools do it differently. Other umbrella schools are very much like a brick and mortar school, but you're at home, you're using a certain curriculum. You know, they'll help you choose a curriculum, they'll put together a transcript for you, they'll organize field trips for you, whatever they do, and they charge you accordingly. I do none of that. Absolutely none of that. And I try to be very clear about that when people sign up. I'm not offering all the bells and whistles, which is why I don't charge anything. So
Got it.
leave you alone
So
and you do your thing.
yeah, so it's just remarkable and clearly so popular now,
Yes,
serving
many people seem to
thousands of families.
appreciate that idea of just having the time and space to go through that whole deschooling process at first, where they
Yeah.
can let go of all the things that they've been taught that they have to do, and they have to do it this way, and to be given just time and space to let go of that, to unlearn all that, and to build how they want to do things. They seem to like that.
So of the roughly 14,000 homeschoolers that you're or unschoolers that you're working with, are they all would they all be sort of classifying themselves as unschoolers or people who believe in this philosophy of self-directed education, of letting the learner kind of guide their own educational process? Or is that just the freedom and flexibility that your umbrella school provides is what's attracting these families?
That's the second one there. You are
Yeah. Okay.
free to sit your child at a kitchen table and do curriculum all day long, if that's what you think is a good idea. You are free to test them. You are free to be as regimented and structured as you like, as school-like as you like.
Got it.
Wouldn't be my choice, but that's not my decision. Um,
Yeah. So
on the other end, free to explore the idea and move toward unschooling with no curriculum. And most people land somewhere in the middle where they're using a little bit of curriculum and they're doing a lot of other nice activities and using other resources. We live in Florida, a beautiful place to get out and explore things. So most people end up in that relaxed homeschooler sort of middle ground. But I don't think some people accidentally call themselves unschoolers because that's sort of the shorthand for I'm enrolled in Florida Unschoolers. They'll call themselves unschoolers. But when you actually talk to them about what they do, they're homeschoolers. They're using
yeah.
curriculum at least part of the time.
Yeah, so tell us if you could, Nancy, about your experience as a homeschooling mom. How did you approach homeschooling? What was your educational philosophy?
Um, Very much just trying to figure it out at first. Um, Two really bright kids, and we were just constantly at the library and trying to get out and do, nice, fun, educational things, and science museum and the beach and the nature trails and all those things that kids love to do. Um, but as I said, I started to do the very structured, I had a whole notebook of structured Florida state standards, all cut and pasted of what we were going to do for each subject and all this. And by the time I got done putting that red notebook, I remember the red notebook, by the time I got done putting that together, I had been doing this for a few months with my son, and I realized this has nothing to do with what we're actually doing every day. So I put the notebook on the shelf and never looked at that again. And then I started looking at all the curriculum choices. And back then, I mean, this was 20 some years ago, wasn't the Stone Age, but it was 20 some years ago. We really didn't have reliable, great internet. It was dial up. And so we did rely on the library a lot more and just getting out and doing things in the community. As they got older, they were interested in martial arts for my son and all kinds of music and art things for my daughter. Um, so we try to just be involved in activities like that. As far as the academics, they were bright kids with access to, the internet and a great library system. And, I tried to stay out of the way and just feed their interests when they had them. So it just naturally sort of evolved into being unschooling as I was able to let go of my red notebook of stuff we had to do.
Yeah, and did your kids homeschool kind of all the way through high school, or what was their path?
My son did, and then he went to work for a while with my husband who does marble and tile and stuff like that. And then he realized, this is hard work. I'm going to college. So, so he went on to college and he got of all things, he got a teaching degree and, just didn't know at first what he wanted. And then he was kind of interested in that. And then when he graduated, now he's gone into doing some IT support thing that I really don't understand. So it's, he zigged and zagged a lot. My daughter left homeschooling a few years early to do dual enrollment we have a high school here that is on the same campus as the community college, and the kids can do mostly dual enrollment classes for the last 2 years. And
Mm.
she decided to go that way. And then she knew very early on she wanted to go into psychology or something like that. And now she's a mental health counselor and went on to get her master's degree. So, different paths, completely different kids from birth. But they both are happy and healthy, and doing great. So, but they kind of
Yeah.
zigged and zagged their way through, till they found where they wanted to be. And she was much more planned and he's more experimental, I think.
Yeah, but shows that this sort of unconventional path of education works in all kinds of different ways when we
Personality.
provide that freedom and flexibility. So, what have you noticed, Nancy, over the past few years? Well, I guess since 2001, since you started Florida Unschoolers, um, clearly the group has grown, the online school or the umbrella school has grown. Um, have you also, I guess, let me leave it there. What are sort of the trends that you're seeing in homeschooling and unschooling in Florida?
Well, in homeschooling and home education, just so many people are, much more interested in it, and much more uh, not happy with their current situation in their brick and mortar school. Of course, most people don't have the option, don't have the choice, have to use their local public school. And a lot of public schools, my nephew's in public school and it's a fantastic system for him. A lot of them do a great job, but some of the people have to homeschool their kids, especially the special needs people are finding they're not getting the services they need. Um, and then just everyone else just knows these options are out there now. And they start exploring them. The internet's there for everybody to Google. And, organizations like yours are out there, talking about all these different options. And aside from the incredible confusion right at the beginning, because the parents are just overwhelmed with options now, it ends up being a good thing for them because they can at least, if they can financially figure it out, work in split shifts or however parents do it, because it's hard financially. Somebody's usually missing an income. A lot more people seem to be, trying to give it a go. At least for the younger years, a lot of kids seem to go back to school, at the end there. But
Yeah.
not all. Many people graduate as private school graduates from my umbrella school and other umbrella schools and go on to college, no problem. So there's
Amazing.
just so many choices. It confuses the parents a lot at first.
Yeah. So do you think that that's really what's changed, especially recently, Nancy, in terms of parents realizing that homeschooling and some of these other alternative educational paths are legitimate, viable options for them? And sort of
I
what
just
led to that change?
it's become normal. You're not in a supermarket and you're the only one there with a kid, you're not at the park and you're the only one there with a kid.
Mhm.
Um, Parents just are getting that message that this is just another option. There's so many ways to go about it, so many different philosophies. Many of them are very, afraid when they leave the traditional brick and mortar system, whether it's public or private. They've been told, they have to do it that way. But the minute they start exploring all these school options, the alternatives you usually talk to, like Acton and all the others, the Sudburys, and then they actually look into homeschooling and they get through the confusion of it, because there's so many things named with very similar names. So, and then not everyone had a great experience with online schooling at home during
Mhm.
COVID. So they sometimes think that's what homeschooling is. And they don't realize how much freedom they would have. They don't have to be tied to their computer all day. And some of them immediately sign their kids up for 6 online classes. And I try to tell them, you don't have to do that either. You don't have to replicate that bad model. So once they get the idea that they can decide, make all these decisions, um, and they get the courage to do it, which is hard, um, it's great. It's just a lot more people, and they talk to each other and they have support groups and, special types of homeschoolers with special needs or special interests, get together. And it's a nice community. Definitely is.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you said that you really want Florida Unschoolers to be hands off. Families can approach homeschooling however they choose. But it does sound like you're having conversations with families that are maybe new to homeschooling, maybe they're connecting or you're helping them to connect to different organizations. So what is your role? What is sort of your interfacing interaction with homeschoolers?
That is the balancing act. And you've hit a
Yeah.
good part of my day is trying to explain to people that I am not a life counselor. I am not here to help you figure out how to live your whole life. And for a lot of people, most people, the reality is this is not a realistic choice. You have to go to school and work, and the kids have to go to school, and that's just how it is. And they might be wishful that they could, homeschool, but it's just not going to work out. The rent has to be paid, and somebody has to be with the 6-year-old. And so sometimes they can, finagle something. But for the people who can figure that slice of it out, I'm still not the life counselor. I don't know your kid. I don't know what your goals are with your kid, what your beliefs are, what your comfort level is with how relaxed you want to be about academics, or why you want to homeschool. Some people want to homeschool because their kids deeply into sports and they want to travel, or deeply into music. I have some families where the child is a child actor and they're traveling all over, so I'm not here to organize your day for you, but I point people to the resources for them to Google. Get out to Google, I say to a lot of people, and start looking at all the curriculum choices. Get some samples of different ones that you think might work for your kid, and sit with your child and do some. There's no substitute for that, just looking at them and trying a few out. Um, and then deeply thinking and reading about all the philosophies and approaches to homeschooling and learning at home. I'm not here to tell you that you have to do it a certain way. I'm here to tell you that you have that option, that you have that opportunity, that space and time to figure it out. And the big thing that I just drone on about when I talk to people is deschooling. It's a big part of my website. And I just emphasize it's not going to be like a week of you looking at a few websites and you've got it all figured out. This is going to be months of you trying things and discussing things with your partner and with your kids, and going to different homeschool groups and curriculum fairs and outings, and seeing what it's like to live with your kid 24/7, which is different if you're used to your kid going off to school every day. Um, And it's going to be months and months of everybody adjusting to that new reality, and trying all this new stuff and just realizing that you have permission to not do it the way you've always done it. It's a big change. So I'm just really pushing about telling people to start with deschooling and give themselves time, give themselves permission to take the time. And they're always so afraid, you know, or a lot of them, not all of us, but a lot of them are, oh, he's going to get behind. He's going to, you know, not be in step with the other 7-year-olds or whatever. And it's like, come on, let it go. Let it go to the park, go to the beach, relax, and slowly build how you want your life to look.
Yeah, and really sort of decompress from that schooling experience and realize there's so many different ways for education to look outside of the conventional classroom. You
Mhm.
mentioned that for some families, you know, homeschooling is just not an option for them. They have to work and their kids are going to school. I'm curious what you think about the emerging microschooling movement, which tries to make homeschooling more accessible to more families who are working. Where, you know, I frequently spotlight on my podcast programs that are serving homeschoolers
Right.
as part-time or full-time schooling alternatives. How are you seeing that kind of micro school space in your Florida Unschoolers group?
I know a lot of Florida Unschoolers parents use microschools, co-ops, different support groups, just parents getting together formally or informally, to supplement, to give themselves some time to go do what they need to do. Um, these things do not come free though. And you know, how does that fit into your budget? How does that fit into your life? So it's a solution for some people. It's not a solution for everyone, and it doesn't need to be. Public schools are there. They could be a lot better. They could be funded. They could be, you know, it's providing the services that special needs kids need or that other kids need. Um, but we're going through so many changes that, you know, a lot of those families are feeling like right now we have a terrible teacher shortage in public schools in Florida. I don't know how it is in other states, but um, so parents are seeing overcrowding and they're seeing all kinds of problems and they're kind of being pushed into homeschooling when maybe that wouldn't be their first choice. And then they've got to figure out the finances. But these micro schools and the alternative schools and co-ops and other more formal, less formal sort of places so that your kid can be and do something fun, maybe constructive, maybe, you know, a positive thing in their day to give you some free time. Those are all great things. Those are all terrific things. And I think it gives the parents a way to look at how they might homeschool, gives them glimpses into other philosophies. Is it a
Yeah,
Montessori? Is it a Sudbury? Is it an Acton? How, you know, what's the
right.
philosophy behind that? So it helps.
Yeah, just recently I had Danielle McLean on my podcast. She's the founder of Keystone Education Center in Vero Beach, Florida, which is a micro school that she just launched this year for neurodiverse students. She has two autistic boys who are in the program. And she, you know, you mentioned teacher shortages. She ended up co-founding her program with two public school special education teachers who really wanted an alternative to the conventional classroom. So not just families looking for alternatives, but educators as well. And her all of her students, she has 17 students at the moment, all are attending nearly tuition free using Florida's school choice scholarship programs and other school choice mechanisms that make these micro schools so much more accessible. All of her students are recognized as homeschoolers in Florida. So I think that accessibility piece may be also something that is expanding
The
with
special
some of
needs
these
kids,
policies.
that funding is there, yes.
Yeah.
Um, for the special needs kids. The non-special needs kids have this new program called PEP,
PEP.
and I don't really know how that works. It's not, it doesn't replace somebody's salary. You know, it's not money in your hand to pay the mortgage. It's a
Right.
reimbursement type program to um, pay for what you paid for curriculum. or maybe it'll pay the tuition at one of these
Right.
centers for a day, 1 day a week or something, whatever it pays for. Um, so that it might be a help, and then you're still, the other half of the week, you're still doing regular homeschooling. Um, it's that a practical solution for, a lot of people. We'll see. And how does that work in the long run? And what happens to other systems in the state when that grows? We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's been an issue for years now, with all these not terribly well run systems.
Yeah, sometimes implementation with school choice programs can be a challenge, but huge demand from families who want to access these school choice programs. So it will be interesting to see where that goes. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear some of your predictions on the future of homeschooling, not only in Florida, but nationally. Do you think that this is going to continue to grow? Do you think we've plateaued in terms of homeschooling? What are your thoughts?
I couldn't predict. I wouldn't have predicted that it'd be this big. When I started, like I said, there were 6 kids enrolled, and I remember telling my husband, "Oh, well, I'm about to hit 200 kids enrolled. That'll be it because that's way too much for me." And then because it was all paper back then, and people mailing me their paperwork, and then I had so much help from a few parents saying, "Use this system. Google does this for free. You can do that for free," and I need free options because that's my whole setup. Um, so then I grew and learned how to use online things, and now everybody just emails everything and uploads everything. So it works out great. So I can get as big as I need to be at this point, but I sure wouldn't have guessed, that we'd be where we are now, 20 years ago. It's just
Amazing.
we'll see where it's at in another 20 years.
Yeah, and I'd love to just sort of ask you because I think this is something talk to founders a lot about. They might be running homeschooling collaboratives, co-ops, microschools, and so forth, and their children are enrolled in these programs, and
Mhm.
that's often why they started them. Similar
Right,
for you,
right,
why you started. But you keep going, even though
right.
your children are graduates.
Right.
Why? What continues to motivate you to do this work?
I just love it. I just love seeing how these parents have this opportunity, this option to do something to help their kids. I know how that feels. And I'm sort of a nudge about getting back to them really quickly because I remember being that mom looking for the information and um, anxiously trying to figure out what to do with my kid who was sadder every day in school. Um, so I just try to respond quickly. And it's what I do is very much upfront, and then the rest of it, the other 12 years is on them. It's not my input, it's very much at the beginning. But I just love that when it's eye-opening to them that, oh, I can just do what I want to do. I can relax. And if he wants to read a book upside down on the couch, that's okay. It's still reading and we don't have to be so rigid. It's just lovely to see parents. And I've gotten so many nice stories over the years from parents who just said, it made a big difference in their life to have the time and space to figure out how they wanted to do things. So I just love it. And
So great.
I'm not laying bricks. I can sit here at the computer for all day and forever, and it just keeps going. It's great.
So great. So, Nancy, if my listeners and viewers want to find out more about Florida Unschoolers, connect with you, especially if they're a Florida resident, what is the best way for them to do that?
Through the website is where they're going to find all the information they need. It's www.floridaunschoolers.net. You can Google it; it'll come up. There's also a Facebook page that's linked on the website. My contact information is there. Unless you're one of my kids, I'm probably not going to answer the phone if you call me, but you can leave a message. But the website is the place to start.
So great. Well, wish you well for another 20 plus years of
We'll
providing
see. We'll see where it
support.
goes.
Yeah. Just such amazing work. So thrilled to have a chance to talk with you today. Nancy Confer, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a great day.